So I wanted to make a film about vulnerability, and I searched YouTube for anyone who was kind of talking about vulnerability and sort of demonstrating it or being it, and I couldn't find anything, and it just led me to think, firstly, how vulnerable I am to so many things. I'm vulnerable to the dentist, I'm vulnerable to any type of illness, I'm vulnerable to my illness very much so, to other people's illness, to my loved ones' illness, I'm vulnerable to death. I'm vulnerable to the people around me, very much so. Certainly very vulnerable to my kids and the way they behave. There's things they can do that can really touch my vulnerability. I'm vulnerable to my wife. I'm vulnerable to the weather. I'm vulnerable to things that happen in my business. I'm vulnerable to food. I'll go out and I'll see some food or smell some food, and even though I know I don't really need it or it's not good for me, I'll still go out and eat it. I'm just vulnerable to so much, and yet it's so much of a habit for me to go out in the world and put on this kind of sort of macho-ish type, I've got it together, to put out that image, rather than to really feel that vulnerability when it's triggered, and to share it or to admit it with other people. Even the idea that there is nothing to fear but fear itself, in my view, it's not a very not very helpful idea, simply because there may well be nothing to fear. But my reality is that I am frightened of all sorts of things. And that is just, that's just what happens, that when in certain situations or certain ideas, certain things that people say bring up feelings, physical feelings, emotions within me. So what I'd like to do is just to spend just a few moments with you, just being vulnerable, or allowing vulnerability to arise, and then I have a challenge for you. It's so challenging to do this on camera. And so I realised that I'm vulnerable even to silence. And what I'd like you to do is to invite you to make videos and post them as responses to this, in which you allow yourself to be vulnerable. Because so many videos on YouTube, even the ones that are along the lines of what I've done with Charlie, or whatever it is, or attractive to those people who like that type of thing, even those videos, it's rare to find someone being vulnerable live. It's very tricky on camera, so I'll invite you to try it, and look forward to seeing what you have to offer.